feels so bizarre to be back after what feels like a lifetime, but I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be filming a video for you all, and I'm gonna get started right away. I'm not gonna bore you with where I've been, what I've been doing, why I haven't been here. My goal is to be here more often, to film more videos for you all. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna film 3 videos a week or 1 video a week or whatever. I'm just going to film when I can. And hopefully that will be more and more as time goes on. I'm not going to set any unrealistic standards. I'm just going to film as much as I can because it truly is my passion. It's important to always remember these victims and their families, and it's my passion to do that. But thank you so much. I've gotten continued subscribers and continued comments, and it's been really awesome, even through the times where I haven't been able to sit down in front of the camera and make a video for you. It's been nice to hear from you and engage with you on my socials. My Instagram is Lexie Stamps, previously Lexie Reeves. It is now Lexie Stamps since I've gotten married. You can always feel free to shoot me a message there, or you can email me if you have any case requests. Lexie Reeves Films. Sorry, I had to think about that. LexieReevesFilms@gmail.com. Feel free to send me any requests. I would love to do more videos one-on-one with family and friends of victims, and bring that story to the public and fight for these victims and their families. My ultimate goal is to work with cold cases and things like that. So feel free to message me on Instagram, email me. I would love to work with you, your family, and yeah. Just a little side note, my microphone went out. I don't know what's going on with it, so it's gonna be microphoneless for this video, but I will get my audio issues figured out in the next one, so please just bear with me. It's always something, I know. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, you know how everyone has those cases or that case that happens in their town or their state that has just completely engulfed the city, the state, you know, even the nation sometimes, and you just can't stop researching it and looking into it and following it, and every move that the perpetrator makes, or you know, any new information, you just take it all in, and it's like you've been there from day one and you just want to know everything. That has been me with the Casey White and Vicky White manhunt. And Casey and Vicky are not related. As I will tell the story, you will see that, but they're not related. I have been there since day one of this case, and I've been, you know, you see all these places where it's like, oh my god, I was there before, I've stopped there, I stayed in that hotel, things like that. That has been me with this case. Have been itching to make a video about this. I've been trying so hard to wait for more information to come out, but I can no longer wait, as I don't know if we're gonna get any more information anytime soon. So I just decided, you know what, my first video back after this long hiatus, it's going to be this video. So I remember sitting at a conference and my phone goes off and it's alert for this blue alert, and I was like, what is this about? There was an officer that had been taken by an inmate, and I remember thinking, oh no, like I hope they're okay, thinking that the inmate made the officer go by force. And it was much later in the day, or it was actually the next day, I believe, that I realized the gravity of the situation, that it wasn't a officer being held at gunpoint, you know, being dragged to the car to take them somewhere. It was almost entirely pre-planned by the officer. And I think that's what makes this so interesting, is that, you know, I think we're all enthralled and interested in this relationship dynamic that Casey and Vicky had, which we are going to learn more about. Casey Cole White was born on August 20th, 1983 to his mother, Connie Moore. He grew up in Anderson, Alabama with his mom. Not much is known about Casey's early life, but his mother described him when he was a child as a basic country kid in an interview she did with Daily Mail. His mother also states he was never really bullied due to his size, and that he's always been very tall. As an adult, Casey was listed to be 6'9", and that he was anywhere between 250 to 350 pounds. I've seen it varied. I'm not sure if he gained weight, lost weight, you know, over time, whatever, but it was registered as 250 to 350. Casey has tattoos that link him to being in an Alabama-based white supremacy group called Southern Brotherhood. He has a tattoo on his back that shows the Confederate flag with the words Southern Pride, and a tattoo on his chest that shows the letters SB, SS, and a Nazi symbol. Casey's mom said that he was always a great kid and a good guy until he turned about 18, and that's when he started using drugs. It was at this time that he was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. Casey's mom also states that, quote, all of the women that Casey has had in his life, meaning girlfriends and things like that, have had emotional problems, and that Casey has a big heart and just wants to help people. She also states that Casey has never been a habitual drug user, that he took them periodically, and it's something that's always caused her fear and worry. Casey's attorney has come out and said that Casey is, quote, a decent person when he is in a supervised environment and taking his medication, and that he can also even be friendly. It is later stated by Sheriff Rick Singleton, which we're going to hear a lot about him, but he stated that Casey did not leave the jail with his medication, so that's one of the main reasons, not main reasons, but that's one of the reasons that they felt that this was going to be a dangerous situation after he escaped, because he was unmedicated, at least to their knowledge. It's also been stated that Casey used meth, and when he was on meth, he was a very dangerous individual. And that's another reason they were afraid that maybe things could go south, is that maybe he was going to be using meth when he was outside of the prison. We know at some point Casey had children, we just don't know how many or with whom, and we're not sure if Casey was ever married. We do know, however, that Casey started dating Christy Lynn Shelton around the 2007-2008 period of time. There's not too much information that we have about Christy Lynn Shelton other than she started dating Casey, and that she was also an incredibly kind person with a big heart who loved her children. She had 3 daughters, and she loved to help people. Chrissy and Casey started dating around 2007, and by 2008 they were living together in a home in Lexington, Alabama. Christy's brother, who was 17 at that time in 2007-2008, told AL.com that he was staying with them a lot during that time, and he really looked up to Casey, that they got along very well, and they almost had like a brotherly kind of relationship. Around this time, Christy told her brother that being with Casey made her the happiest that she's ever been. Christy's brother did say, though, that Casey was a, quote, master manipulator. Around this time that they started dating, a DHR social worker came to the home of Casey and Christy's, and they found some guns, and they were Casey's guns. It's reported that custody of her 3 daughters was taken from her at the time. We're not sure, any more than that. Christy was absolutely gutted. She was heartbroken. It's reported that the guns were not even hers. She didn't even know how to use a gun. Christy made it her absolute mission to do whatever it took to get her daughters back, to get the custody of her daughters back. And she knew that that meant one thing: she was going to have to break up with Casey. We will never know if Christy tried to end things with Casey. On February 1st of 2008, Christy Lynn Shelton allegedly shot herself in the chest with a sawed-off shotgun in her home that she shared with Casey while he was present. It was one of the guns that belonged to Casey, one that she had told her brother she didn't even know how to use just mere weeks, months prior to this incident. Investigators questioned Casey, and he was initially cleared. It was initially reported that he was crying and hysterical, and he didn't have any blood on his clothes or on his hands. Coroners would report in Christy's autopsy that her cause of death was ruled as a suicide by a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. I am always and always will be a fact-based channel. Every true crime video I ever have put out and ever will put out will be based in facts and not speculation unless stated otherwise. I keep my opinions out of things, but I do want to say that Christy's brother's opinion is that Christy went to end things with Casey, or tried to end things with Casey, and something may have gone south. Unfortunately, we will never definitively know, but it is possible that it can be proven in a court of law. In 2020, years had passed since Christy Lynn's death, and it was reported that Casey White was being charged with a murder for hire, which more on that in a minute. But after she saw that, she called the local county police department that was the one that investigated the initial case and asked them if they would reopen the case, and they agreed. There's not a whole lot of evidence to go off of, but I'm glad that they're giving her case another look, and hopefully they will be able to find out more information if foul play was involved. Her daughter, Summer, posted a TikTok in which she explains the situation in a little more depth, and also kind of talks about her mom and who she was as a mom. And I think it's really nice that this is getting more attention. The TikTok kind of went viral during the manhunt for Casey and Vicky, so I'm going to link it below. Check it out, give her a follow, and hopefully she will keep us updated as this case goes on. I will try my best to get as much information and continue to keep you all updated as it goes on as well. I'm really hoping they'll receive some justice and some answers for this awful situation that they were put into. I'm going to read an excerpt from Christy Lynn's obituary. Her mother wrote a little piece, and I'm going to go ahead and read that. My dear Christy, your free spirit has flown away. Although on your journey to heaven, I know you will no longer feel the pain. My heart is broken, and I think I can't bear the pain. It helps to know you are heaven's gain. Your smile will be missed. Oh, how precious you were. Your love has touched many because you cared. God knows a special angel is on her way. He has prepared a place for you to stay. I love you, Christy, my precious one. Your work on earth is now done. Love, Mama. Limestone County Sheriff's Office has confirmed that they are reopening Christy's case, but they would not release any information or any details. Christy's brother told Carol Robinson from AL.com, quote, I would love to see him either admit it or the investigators possibly exhume her body and do another autopsy. We haven't gotten over it. We need closure. As always, as updates come out, I will update you as well. Continuing on through the timeline of Casey's life. So we have his early life, we have up until 2008. September 25th, 2010, Casey was arrested for beating his brother in the face nearly to death with an axe handle. He was charged with second-degree assault. In 2012, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He was unfortunately released after only 3 years and 8 months in 2015. Continuing to go through the timeline, I'm going to just give you the short version of this now, but I will definitely come back to this more in depth later. On October 23rd, 2015, Connie Ridgway was murdered in her home. It is a different day, and I look completely different, and I sound different because I have a sinus infection. But my last video, the first part that I recorded the rest of it, and I had some massive audio issues, and so I'm trying this again for the second time, so just bear with me. My dog is in and out. I'm in a different place. Just ignore that. Anyways, we're going to continue on where we just left off. In the early hours of December the 1st of 2015, it was a Tuesday morning, Casey broke into a home and stole 2 handguns. Around 10:15 p.m. that same day, Casey broke into another ex-girlfriend's home. This ex-girlfriend has not been named due to safety reasons, but he broke into her home with the 2 handguns that he had stolen that morning. Once Casey had broken in, she saw him and she ran down the hallway towards the back exit of her home, like the back door, to exit and go to her neighbor's home to call the police. As she was running down the hall, he was shooting at her, but thankfully she made it out and made it to her neighbor's home. Around the time Casey's ex-girlfriend was trying to escape, he simultaneously was trapping her 2 male roommates into a bathroom. Some reports say he was holding them hostage, others say that they ran in there on their own and were trying to escape out of the bathroom window. As the roommates were trying to escape, one of them, or possibly the ex-girlfriend, or both simultaneously, were calling the police and reporting this situation. A police report has been, put into the public. It was made public, but a lot of information has been redacted, I'm assuming for the safety of all parties involved. However, the 911 call was made, and it was stated in that call that there were 2 children. Everybody say hello to Logan. She's our sweet girl. She is just gonna be a part of the video because she's down here with me. So she's gonna hang out with us for the rest of it. Anyways, so there were 2 children in the home. They were in the basement, and thankfully they were unharmed. We don't know whether Casey knew they were down there or if he just, let them go. But thankfully, both the children were unharmed. The 2 roommates also escaped and ran to the neighbor's home, and the sheriff's office got there and rescued the 2 children. So the situation de-escalated, which was good. But all of that happened after Casey was running out of the home. Unfortunately, as he was running out of the home, he looked back and fired shots. And it pains me to say this because I'm such an animal lover, but unfortunately, Casey shot and killed the family dog. Not too long after this happened, an additional 911 call came from a home about 2 miles up the road from Casey's ex-partner's home. It was a gentleman who called and said that a man identifying himself as Casey came into his home and demanded money. When the man who Casey was attempting to rob told him, I don't have any money, he then stole the keys and the Ford Explorer that the man drove and a 9mm handgun. So now Casey has 3 guns on him. Casey then got into the Ford Explorer and drove away. The crime spree does not end there, unfortunately. Roughly 30 minutes later, an additional 911 call came into Giles County, Tennessee, into their 911 dispatch. Giles, Tennessee is about 20 minutes north of Limestone County in Alabama. This 911 call said that Casey attempted to carjack or hijack, I'm not sure what the correct word would be, but he tried to steal an 18-wheeler that was parked at a rest stop. We call them rest stops in Alabama. I think they're also called welcome centers. You know what I mean, place where you can stop and use the restroom around state lines. The truck was parked there, and there was a man inside. This rest stop was along I-65 north in Tennessee and was about 20 minutes from Limestone County. The caller said that a man attempted to jump into the 18-wheeler and demanded that he take the truck or drive the truck somewhere else. There was a man in the 18-wheeler, and he would go on to tell the story of what happened to him. He said that Casey jumped into the 18-wheeler in the cab and with a handgun and demanded that Casey drive him somewhere. Thankfully, the man that was driving the truck thought on his feet and jumped in the back of the truck, which is the sleeper compartment, and barricaded himself in. Casey then jumped out of the truck and ran across the parking lot where another woman was sitting in her car alone. Casey demanded that she open the door, and when she refused, Casey then pulled out one of the handguns that he had stolen and shot her in her arm, but thankfully she survived. You would think it would be over then, but no, it was not. Around midnight, Casey drove an additional 20 miles north and got off on an exit at Centersville, Tennessee, and went to a Pilot gas station. He took 2 handguns inside and held a man at gunpoint, robbing him of his 2012 Lincoln sedan. For whatever reason, Casey decided to drive 40 miles south back to where the crime spree began in Limestone County. It was there that he was spotted by police and a police chase ensued. Casey was driving along Highway 31 going towards Huntsville, Alabama, if you're familiar with the area, and he was driving around 100 miles per hour. When Casey was just south of Huntsville, he drove into a field where his vehicle got stuck in the mud. Well, it's not his vehicle. The stolen vehicle that he was driving got stuck in the mud. Casey then jumped out of the vehicle, and he was standing in the field holding both handguns to his head, screaming hysterically that he was going to shoot. Casey was demanding to the police officers that had come to the field as backup that they bring him the, at the time, Limestone County Sheriff, Mike Blakely. Casey stated that he wanted to talk to him. Casey also asked for a pack of Marlboro, that's such a hard word to pronounce, Marlboros? The cigarettes, you know what I mean. He asked for a pack of those and a Sun Drop, which is like a drink. I don't know if it's just in the South, but it's just like a drink. The sheriff that they brought to Casey, the at the time sheriff Mike Blakely, along with all of the officers on the scene, negotiated with Casey for over an hour and talked him into peacefully surrendering, thankfully, although so much damage had already been done. He was arrested and taken to Limestone County Jail. In March of 2016, which is a year and 3 months after the crime spree that took place in December of 2015, Casey was indicted on 15 counts. On October 27th of 2017, Casey's brother Stephen, the one whom he attacked with an axe handle, disappeared. Stephen Patrick White walked away from his home in Town Creek, Alabama around 4 p.m. and was last seen by his wife walking into the woods in the area. Stephen's wife immediately reported that he was missing once he didn't come back home. Multiple searches by family, friends, law enforcement, dive teams that searched the surrounding bodies of water, and a canine unit that came to look for any evidence or body, they all came out and have been searching for him, and as of today, 2022, he has not been found. Obviously, Casey was in jail, so he's not directly linked to this. I just wanted to mention it because, as I've said many times on this channel, I'm all about an advocate for victims, and I believe that Stephen is one, and I just wanted to put the information out there. Anyone with information on Stephen's whereabouts or any information that may have happened to him, you can call the Lawrence County Sheriff's Office at 256-974-9291. So I just wanted to put that out there. Hopefully someone knows something somewhere. The sheriff's office said a $2,000 reward will be given to anyone who brings information that leads to the whereabouts of Stephen. So again, just wanted to put that information out there. I'm not saying that Casey was involved. He was in jail at the time, but I just wanted to put that out there. 4 years later, in February of 2019, Casey was charged and found guilty of a lot of those charges that were against him during the crime spree. I'm going to read them. I'm going to look because there's a lot, so bear with me. He was charged with third-degree burglary, first-degree robbery and burglary, breaking and entering a vehicle, animal cruelty, 2 kidnapping charges, attempted murder, and attempting to elude. Casey was sentenced to 75 years and would spend those years at the William E. Donaldson Correctional Facility in Bessemer, Alabama. Casey was interviewed by police and stated that his only regret was, quote, not killing his ex-girlfriend and not dying by suicide by police, end quote. Casey also said that if he ever got out of jail, whether that be released or he broke out, he would attempt to kill his ex again. It was stated that Casey's time at Donaldson Correctional Facility was just really miserable for him, and that he hated it there and was even involved in 3 stabbing incidences where he was the victim. Casey was transferred to Lauderdale County where he would wait for his trial. About a month after his sentence, in May of 2019, Casey, while in Lauderdale County, filed an appeal for his conviction to be overturned. Casey was also asking for a new trial, and all of this was denied. Around this time, Casey was also transferred back to Donaldson Correctional Facility because a shank was found in his cell in Lauderdale County. It was reported by a former inmate who was incarcerated with Casey. His name was Robert McBay. He reported to a news station that Casey was miserable in Donaldson. He said that Casey was attacked numerous times while he was there. Robert said he grew up in Limestone County as well and met Casey in and out of prison, so he had known him for a long time. Robert said Casey was, quote, very dangerous with no regard for human life, and also said that he was elusive and quick. Robert said Casey was also racked down numerous times, and racked down essentially means he was put, as in what Robert explains, as jail inside of jail. In the jail that Casey was in, he could kind of roam around the open area. They had like a place where you could watch some television, use the phones, sit around on tables and talk to each other, and once you are racked down and they find something, you are put in a holding cell essentially where you're separated. I think it's similar to like solitary confinement. Robert stated that within 24 hours of Casey being in this cell by himself, that his entire mannerisms, behavior, everything just shifted. He was banging on doors and he was screaming and threatening the officers that were in the area. Casey was also placed on suicide watch because he had pressed the button where you can communicate. I'm not sure if anyone has ever watched like 60 Days In, but my husband and I really enjoy the show, and it kind of gives you an idea of like prison life, but there's usually a button where they can press. So he pressed the button and told a guard that if he doesn't get out of this cell that he is going to end his life. They came in, took his bed sheets, food trays, anything that he had, and they put him in a suicide vest. Robert said this was all shortly before his crime spree in 2015, so this is when he was in prison for something else. He had a rap sheet a mile long. I wouldn't have enough time to go through every single one, so this was all like little things leading up to his big crime spree in 2015. In June of 2020, Casey wrote a letter to the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office to the cold case investigator, Brad Potts, whom he asked to meet with. He said he could help solve a cold case. It was in that meeting that Casey confessed to the murder of Connie Ridgway, which is the murder I had kind of briefly mentioned earlier and said I would go into more detail about. But yes, Casey admitted to doing that, to being paid to murder Connie. Casey apparently also, during his admission, knew information about the case that only the police knew and that they hadn't released to the public yet. This is called guilty knowledge, and we'll bring this back up later, so just keep that in mind. Even though we're in June of 2020 where Casey has admitted to this, we're going to backtrack to October of 2015, and I'm going to tell you about Connie and about this tragic murder that took place. Casey admitted to stabbing Connie to death, and she was 59 at the time. Connie was found deceased on October 23rd of 2015 in the Meadowland apartment complex on Prince Street, which is in Rogersville, Alabama. This apartment complex is located in Lauderdale County, and it was across the street from the Lauderdale County High School's football field. Rogersville is an incredibly small town. Like, I thought my town was small, but Rogersville had a population of 1,400 people, 1,400 people. Now, I know where I live, I don't know how many people are here, but it is a small town, and I know that it is the same way there, where news travels fast. Everybody knows everybody and their mama. Like, I know that it is a very small town, and news does travel fast. So on October 23rd of 2015, a football game was ensuing across the street from the apartment complex, and Connie's neighbor noticed that she hadn't heard from her, that day. In the apartment complex that Connie lived in, many of her neighbors were elderly and or on fixed income, so Social Security and or disability. Some couldn't drive, didn't have cars or gas money, so Connie would oftentimes offer rides to the bank, store, doctor's appointments, pharmacy. Connie would give those rides to her elderly neighbors. That apartment complex was a very, very tight-knit community of people, and they all adored Connie. So when Connie's neighbor didn't hear from her that day, they walked over to her apartment and noticed that the door was slightly ajar. Connie's neighbor looked inside and saw Connie was laying on the floor, face down inside. The neighbor called in a welfare check to the police around 6 p.m. that night. The police responded immediately and came in, and that's where they saw and determined that Connie had been horrifically stabbed in what they describe as a home invasion gone wrong, and they pronounced her dead. Fast forward to June of 2020, where Casey was admitting all of this to the police. They asked him why he did this, who paid him to do this, and he did not divulge any information on that. And really, it just doesn't make any sense as to why anyone would want to kill someone like Connie. As far as we know, Connie seemed like an angel on earth. She was described as a petite woman with a big, kind heart. Besides assisting her neighbors in her free time, Connie loved attending her church, which was Clement's Baptist Church in Athens, Alabama. It was stated that she attended once on Wednesdays and twice on Sundays during the week. She was also very into crafting and would take white felt sheets and craft them into little angels that she would give to her friends and family and members of her church. She was described as a never met a stranger type of person, and she was just truly so loved by everyone in her family, everyone in the community, and especially those in the apartment complex. Reading straight from her obituary, Connie Jane Patterson W. Ridgway, 59, of Rogersville, died on Friday, October 23, 2015, at her home. On Sunday, November 1st, 2015, a private service was held for family and friends. Mrs. Ridgway was born in Athens, Alabama on July 4th, 1956. Her family and friends remembered her as the loving, caring, and giving Christian woman she was to them all. She was adored by everyone who knew her, and she returned their affection. She had 2 sons, Cameron and Austin Williams. Connie's son Austin sat down with the CNN writer Elliot C. McLaughlin to do an interview. It was stated that Connie loved America and anything that had the American flag on it. July 4th was her favorite holiday and was also her birthday. When the family was sorting through her belongings in her apartment, they noticed that almost half of her belongings had American flag on it, which is why they decided to put the American flag stars and stripes on her tombstone. Austin also stated that Connie always went really big on birthdays. Austin stated that their mom worked at Hardee's, and at the time she wasn't making very much money, but she would spend $50 or more on video games or something for them for their birthdays, like a gift that they really, really wanted. And they always felt like that was so special, because of her financial situation, that she would still put them above everything. The tradition of big birthdays continued on when Austin and Cameron were still adults. Connie loved visiting Austin in Atlanta and going to the Braves game for his birthday. Austin said that one year she had a broken toe, but she still thought spending time with her sons for the Braves game would still be worth it, so she still went despite having a broken toe. Austin says one of the things he misses the most about his mom is the Mississippi mud cakes that she would make for him on his birthday. He said that she made them just the way he liked them, with no nuts, with just marshmallows and chocolate frosting on top. It's absolutely easy to see that Connie was loved by everyone, so who would do this and why? The apartment complex and the entire city were just so taken back by this and shocked, because they all knew Connie as the sweet, kind woman who would do anything for anyone. They thought, who could do this? And the answer is, allegedly, Casey White. It's also important to note that Casey was interviewed as a suspect, or at least a person of interest, in 2015 when this happened, but was ruled out. On September 1st, 2020, which was 3 months after Casey admitted to killing Connie, he was charged with murder during a first-degree robbery and murder for pecuniary or financial gain, and was charged by a grand jury in Lauderdale County. On October 3rd of 2020, Casey appeared in court asking to remain in Lauderdale County, but it was denied and he was sent back to William Donaldson Correctional Facility. At the time, Casey really didn't have a motive why he would admit this. Maybe for a transfer. A lot of people speculate that's why he did it. He wanted to transfer to Lauderdale County from William Donaldson Correctional Facility and felt like maybe if he admitted to something, then, he would be able to serve the rest of his sentence there, since the crime happened in Lauderdale County. Even if Casey had all the reasons in the world to confess, why did he commit the crime in the first place? He never, at least it wasn't made public, if he ever admitted why he did this, or who paid him, who was it that wanted Connie dead. However, investigators say that there were unpublicized details of Connie's murder that Casey knew, the guilty knowledge we were talking about earlier. It was something only the perpetrator would know and Casey knew. So the investigators say they feel confident that Casey is in fact the person that committed this horrible crime. Since his admission of guilt, Casey has since recanted his statement and said that he did not do this. Casey is pleading not guilty by reasons of insanity. Connie's poor family was just finding some form of closure, if that's even something that exists in situations like these, but they were finally having some peace knowing that the person who did this was going to, had admitted to being guilty, was going to be found guilty, but then he recanted his statement, and he still has a chance of being found guilty. His trial was originally scheduled for June 15th of this year, which as of me filming this was just this couple of days ago, so his trial is going to be moved, which we'll get more into that here in a moment, but he still has a chance of being found guilty for this. If found guilty at this trial, he possibly going to be sentenced to the death penalty for the killing of Connie. Now let's backtrack to September of 2020. This is when Casey was recanting his statement about Connie's murder. Casey was at Lauderdale County at this time. It is alleged that around June of 2020, Casey met someone. It is alleged that Casey met a 17-year law enforcement officer veteran, 4-time Employee of the Year, and the Assistant Direction of Correctional Facilities, Vicky Sue White. Vicky Sue White was born October 19, 1965, to parents J.C. White and Patricia Davis. Vicky has 2 brothers, but it's not public information if they're older or younger. Not a lot of information about Vicky's life has been released to the public, especially her early life. Vicky lived with her mom and brothers in different towns in Alabama, Rogersville, and Lexington, all within Lauderdale County. She lived there her whole life. Vicky married Thomas Edward White, or Tommy, in 2002 when Vicky was 35 or 36, depending on when the wedding date fell. Vicky and Tommy lived on a farm in Lauderdale County and raised cattle. It's reported that Vicky joined the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office anywhere between 1997 and 2005, and I know that's kind of a big jump, but a lot of places say 1997, but then go on to say she only had a 17-year history in law enforcement, so I'm not sure, somewhere between then. Vicky and Tommy separated or divorced. It's, articles state different things. Like I said, there's not much information concrete about her early life. However, they separated, at the very least, divorced, whatever, in 2006, and it was stated that Vicky left him after his substance abuse issue that he was having worsened. However, it's reported that the two remained friendly and close, and Vicky was even really close with Tommy's mom, Dolores. The two never had any children together. It's not been very clearly laid out if they lived together after their separation, but it is stated that Vicky moved back in with Tommy once he started battling Parkinson's. Vicky was taking care of Tommy, and unfortunately he lost his battle to Parkinson's in January of 22. Now Vicky continued to remain close with his mom even after all of this happened. It's not clear what year, but at some point Vicky was promoted to the assistant director of the correctional facility, doing like appointment booking and things like that. From 2015 to 2022, Vicky's coworkers voted her as employee and or supervisor of the year 4 times. Vicky was described as someone who was solid, smart, quiet, and got so much done even if they didn't talk a lot. One former employee described her as smart and calculated. Former inmates described Vicky as someone you could go to if you were having problems with other correctional officers. As part of her job, Vicky would walk about the jail and, go cell to cell and come in contact with almost all of the inmates at one point or the other in her career. But it is there that they believe that Vicky met Casey. Lauderdale County Sheriff Rick Singleton stated that as far as a romantic relationship, they had no evidence of that. However, other inmates said that Vicky and Casey shared, quote, a special relationship. The other inmates said that Casey received special treatment, favors, more portions of food, better food, and cigarettes, which are considered contraband at the Lauderdale County Jail. All of this was given to him by Vicky. This relationship began around the summer of 2020, around June specifically, after Casey had been moved to Lauderdale County after admitting to murdering Connie. Casey was transferred back to Donaldson in October of 2020 after the shank was found in his cell. It was also reported that they exchanged letters as well. So sometime early 2021, Casey was taken from Donaldson back to Lauderdale County for a psychiatric evaluation, and this was done because he was pleading not guilty by reasons of insanity, so his attorneys ordered this and they moved him to Lauderdale County. Now this was supposed to be a quick in and out thing, but COVID was really rampant around this time, and Casey caught COVID and was to stay at Lauderdale County for at least, a few months, 3-4 months. Casey was returned to Donaldson in August of 2021, only to be returned back to Lauderdale County in February of 2022. This was granted by a judge because Casey's attorneys had requested to bring a laptop and or a hard drive in to review evidence with Casey, and they wouldn't allow it at Donaldson because it was considered maximum security. So the attorneys requested a transfer for Casey to Lauderdale County because of this, and it was granted. So now that we're all caught up on who they were, how they met, and how this relationship began, let's jump to April of 2022. On April 18th, Vicky sold her home in Lexington, Alabama, which was in Lauderdale County, 18 minutes to the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office to be exact. And she sold this home for way under market value. She sold this home for $95,550, although it appraised for roughly $235,600. This is all according to online records. On the same day, Vicky went to several banks in the area and withdrew $90,000 to $95,000 in cash from a series of bank accounts that she had set up. After Vicky sold her house, she and her dog moved into the next door house, which is where her mom, Pat, lived. In interviews since this all has happened, Pat has said that Vicky was frugal, she never spent money, and she believed that Vicky probably had multiple savings accounts. Around this time, Vicky also told Tommy's mother, Dolores, that she was going to retire soon and that she was going to retire to the beach. Around the same time, Vicky purchased a 2007 Ford Edge. It was orange, like rust color, and she purchased this under an alias with a fake ID and cash. Vicky also purchased 2 shotguns and an AR-15. Vicky also had access to a 9mm handgun and a .45 caliber handgun. Vicky was also reported, and it was later confirmed, that she visited a Kohl's department store, and it is alleged that she bought men's clothing, like adult men's clothing, and after that she visited an adult store, and at that adult store it's alleged that she had purchased some stockings, but she also perused around the other parts of that store. I would like to say that it's not been publicly confirmed by the police what was purchased at Kohl's and the adult store, and the employees of those stores denied comment when they were asked by reporters, but it was confirmed that she did visit both of those stores. On April 26th, it was reported that Vicky took Casey on about a 10-minute test run, if you will, and that was reported by a newspaper in the area after this all came out, but it was reported that she took him on like a test run a few days before the actual event took place. On April 28th, Vicky submitted retirement papers to her supervisors at Lauderdale County, but the paperwork would have to be processed. However, she did state that her last day would be the next day, which was April 29th. Vicky had worked there for 17 years, and according to her superiors, Vicky had a completely clean, clear record. On April 28th, Vicky stayed at the Quality Inn in Florence, Alabama. She's seen on CCTV footage in the early hours around 5:20 a.m. of April 29th checking out in the lobby of that hotel. Completely unrelated, but I would like to say that I have stayed at that hotel in that same place many times in the summers of 2016 and 17. I worked for a production company, and we would stay there a lot of times when we were shooting a documentary-esque film about Florence and Muscle Shoals. And so when I read that, I was like, oh my God. So just to go back to what I said earlier in the video, which is like, you all have these cases that they just are a little too close to home. Anyways, after Vicky checked out of the hotel, she drove the 2007 orange Ford Edge to a shopping center parking lot, which was not far from the Lauderdale County Courthouse. Vicky had called a coworker and told them that she had locked her keys in the car and that she needed a ride. And the coworker, although thought it was odd because of the time, went and picked her up and took her to work. Vicky arrives on April 29th for what is to be her last day of work at Lauderdale County. At 8:47 a.m., Transport Van 5 leaves the jail with inmates escorted by 2 deputies. At 8:56 a.m., Transport Van 2 leaves the jail with inmates escorted by 2 deputies. I say all of this because you're going to notice something a little different happening here in a moment. On April 29th at 9:20 a.m., Vicky, who is the Assistant Director of Corrections, tells a deputy to prepare Casey White, an inmate, to be transported to the courthouse for a mental health evaluation. The deputy goes and gets Casey White, goes and takes him to booking, shackles his hands and his legs, and has him escorted to Vicky to wait for transport. Vicky tells a booking officer that she is the only officer there that is firearm certified, so she will be the only one transporting Casey in the vehicle. Again, I told you about the vans. Everyone leaves with at least 2 inmates. She tells the booking officer that she is going to take Casey to the courthouse to meet other deputies and drop him off, and then she is going to a pharmacy, a Med Plus, for a doctor's visit because she's not feeling very well. The booking officer, although, knows the policy is for every inmate to have at least 2 deputies, especially someone who is as much of a high-risk, inmate as Casey, but because Vicky was her senior, her supervisor, she didn't say anything, he or she. At 9:41 a.m., Vicky leaves Lauderdale County with Casey and drives towards the courthouse. She's seen on CCTV loading a shackled Casey into the back of a police cruiser while she gets in the front. The jail already had a policy mandating 2 sworn deputies accompany inmates at all times, including during transportation to the courthouse, but, quote, "we emphasized that policy with Casey," Sheriff Rick Singleton said. Vicky White violated the police by leaving the jail with Casey White, but since she was second in command at the facility, other officers didn't push back. Sheriff Rick Singleton stated, quote, "being the boss and over the transport, she just informed the booking officer that she was going to carry him to the courthouse and drop him off, which was a flagrant violation of policy. But I'm sure because it was her boss, the booking officer didn't question it," end quote. Florence City Council member Bill Griffin was shooting a commercial in the area when he saw Vicky White driving by him with Casey White in the back of the car. Bill stated he knew Vicky and he waved at her and she waved back twice before continuing on, where she was going. And remember, this is a small town, everybody knows everybody. At 9:49 a.m. on the same day, April 29th, CCTV footage shows the police cruiser driving by a gas station in the area away from the courthouse, but this footage was not shown until way later in this case. At 10 a.m., Vicky and Casey abandon the police cruiser and get into the 2007 Ford Edge, the orange Ford Edge that was there at the parking center waiting for them. They leave behind in the police cruiser handcuffs and the police radio and the keys as well. We don't know what was happening between 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. All we know now is that they were driving north, which we find that out later on. At 2:37 p.m. on April 29th, the 2007 orange Ford Edge with an unknown license plate and minor damage to the rear left bumper is towed to a tow yard in the Bethesda area of Williamson County in Tennessee. It was found on a county road by a local tow company driver named Robert Kimes. He towed the car from a rural road to an impound lot in Williamson County, Tennessee. There were no plates, and it didn't look like anyone had tried to hide the car, leading officers to later believe and state that they believed and they experienced mechanical trouble and that the car may have just stopped. It appeared as though Casey and Vicky tried to disguise the car as it had green spray paint under the left taillight and on the right side. The car was locked and nothing was found inside. It is believed that they would have arrived in this area around noon. Shortly after this vehicle was found, a vehicle was reported as stolen in the area. So after the manhunt was over, a lot of speculation was that they abandoned that vehicle and stole an additional vehicle. But Sheriff Rick Singleton said to reporters, quote, "My understanding is they purchased that truck there, somewhere around the Bethesda area. We know that's the truck they left in. It wasn't stolen," end quote. It's since been reported that they bought a Ford F-150 from a gentleman in the Bethesda area for $6,000. The Ford Edge that was abandoned was not linked to Vicky and Casey at this time. Around 3:30 p.m. that same day, the booking officer that Vicky had told that she was going to go to the doctor reported to administration that they continued to call Vicky to check on her, but her phone was going directly to voicemail. That's when they realized also that Casey was never dropped back off. They reached out to the officers that were supposedly at the courthouse that were going to get Casey from Vicky, like she had reported, but when they called them and explained the situation, they were just really confused. This is when officers realized that there was no mental health check for Casey at the courthouse to begin with. Nothing was even on the books that day for him. Okay, around 8 p.m. on April 29th, I was at a conference with a bunch of people around, and all of our phones went off, and this like eerie kind of sound was coming from everyone's phone, like it does with an Amber Alert, but it was for a blue alert. That's essentially the end of day one, which is April 29th. So on May 1st, we don't really know a lot that happened. We do know that the investigators were trying to determine if Vicky left willingly with Casey or if Casey had forced her into this. I don't think anyone understood at this time the magnitude in which Vicky's part played in this escape of Casey White. On the same day, U.S. Marshals offered a $10,000 bounty for the return of Casey and Vicky, or the information, or some information that would lead to the return of Casey and Vicky. At this point, Vicky was described as, quote, missing and endangered. What we know now, what we knew after the manhunt ended, is that by the end of day one, Vicky and Casey were in Evansville, Indiana. On May the 2nd, they paid a homeless man $100 to go into a Motel 41 and rent a room for them. They made him rent it out for 2 weeks, but they didn't know if they were going to stay for 1 week or 2 weeks. They just wanted to get their bearings, is what I believe Casey said later on. And this was confirmed by the front desk receptionist. I'm going to insert pictures and video throughout the remainder of the video, and I just want to give credit where credit is due. Jeff Edwards from Indiana is a listener of a friend of mine's radio show. My friend Tim Melton is a talk show host for Talk 99.5's show News and Views, which I highly recommend you check out. It's from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. Monday through Fridays, and Jeff reached out to Tim, who reached out to me and gave me these photos and videos with Jeff's permission to share for this video. So I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. And again, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Tim. Everyone, please go check out Tim's talk show. He's the best. On May the 3rd, U.S. Marshals issued a warrant for Vicky, charging her with permitting or facilitating escape in the first degree in connection with capital murder. Rick Singleton, Lauderdale County Sheriff, said that there's video footage that shows Vicky driving the police cruiser straight from the detention center to the parking lot where she had left the Ford Explorer, making no stops in between. Sheriff Singleton states that this shows that there was much planning involved. She's later charged with forgery and identity theft. As we know, she, used multiple fake IDs to buy these vehicles that she bought for their escape. And along with these vehicles, she had to sign off paperwork and fill out information, with this fake ID. So that's why she was charged with those two things. U.S. Marshals said that the subject should be considered very dangerous, and they're armed with at least an AR-15 and multiple shotguns. Lauderdale County District Attorney Chris Connolly, who worked with Vicky for 16 years, described the employees and himself as shocked and going through the stages of grief. Inmates were also described as shocked and stated this is something they never saw her doing. A recently bonded out inmate told News Nation's Brian Enton that she wasn't surprised that this happened, as the jail was considered chaotic. Vicky's mom said that she was shocked and never saw her daughter doing something like this. Pat stated Vicky never mentioned her retirement or Casey White, and she said, quote, "I never heard of him. I never saw his picture, nothing. I didn't know anything about him." End quote. Around this time, Vicky and Casey also abandoned the 2006 Ford F-150 truck that had a Tennessee license plate. They had bought this vehicle after the orange Ford Edge broke down. So after they abandoned the Ford F-150, they purchased a gray Cadillac. They abandoned the truck in a car wash parking lot in Evansville, Indiana, at South Weinbach Avenue. On May the 4th, video surveillance footage from a gas station in Florence, Alabama was released to the public from April 29th, minutes after the escape, where Vicky and Casey can be seen driving around Florence in a police cruiser. In Evansville, Indiana, James Stinson, a manager of a car wash, noticed on May 3rd that a truck was in the bay, which wasn't something that typically happened. He just decided to let it be and worked the day as normal, went home, and came back the next day on May the 4th, and it was still there. He walked up to the truck and it was unlocked with the keys inside, but it was totally empty. He decided it was weird, so he called the non-emergency police number and got an officer to come out and check things out. An officer came out and found a gun lock under the seat with no gun. The officer unfortunately could not do anything because the truck wasn't reported as stolen. They told James he could have it towed to a county lot, and so he did. He was not contacted by U.S. Marshals until Sunday because at the time, this is still Wednesday, this wasn't linked to Casey and Vicky at all. Also, to literally no one's surprise, the Lauderdale County Sheriff's Office released a statement saying that, quote, Vicky White was no longer an employee there. On May the 5th, Robert Kimes, who was the tow truck driver that towed the 2007 orange Ford Edge in Williamson County, Tennessee, saw a newspaper article that had a photo of that orange Ford Edge that was relating to the manhunt. Robert immediately noticed the vehicle and knew that was the vehicle that he had towed. He texted his boss around 9:30 p.m. and his boss reached out to Williamson County Police Department and informed them of this possible link. On May the 6th in Tennessee, the orange Ford Edge was found around 11 p.m. in a tow lot in Williamson County, Tennessee, about 2 hours north of Florence, Alabama, where they escaped from. The car had been parked there since April 29th, the day that they escaped, but had not been linked until now. Investigators discovered the impounded vehicle belonging to Vicky was recently purchased using an alias. This discovery brought U.S. Marshals, Williamson County Sheriff's Offices, and SWAT members to circle to the property where it was found and see what they could find. At 2:15 p.m. that same day, the Williamson County Sheriff's Office tweets, "The vehicle used by escaped inmate Casey White and former correctional officer Vicky White has been located in Williamson County in Bethesda. There is no sign the two are still in our area. The SUV was reported abandoned a week ago. It was identified last night." On May the 8th, James Stinson reviewed camera footage and saw who he believed to be Casey White on the CCTV. He later stated he also believed he was sure one of them was sleeping at the car wash. James called authorities and they seemed to pass him off, but did pass information along to the U.S. Marshals, who eventually called him and said they were going to send people in. James then saw on the CCTV Vicky pick up Casey in a charcoal Cadillac, which meant the couple was still in town. If not, they weren't far. On May the 9th, which is a long day, so bear with me, the U.S. Marshals arrived in Evansville, Indiana to talk to James Stinson, the car wash manager. They watched CCTV footage and confirmed it was Casey in the video. You could see the tattoos on his arm in the video even matched the ones he had. U.S. Marshals released the images dated May 3rd from the Evansville car wash surveillance camera of a man believed to be Casey White and the Ford F-150. Remember, Casey and Vicky are shacking up in this Motel 41 in the Vanderburgh County area in Evansville, Tennessee. As I said earlier, they were there to, quote, get their bearings, end quote. A local Evansville Police Department officer sees the gray Cadillac at the Motel 41 and reaches out to the investigators, and they begin doing surveillance on the motel. They see Vicky and Casey exiting the motel, getting into the gray Cadillac, and Vicky is wearing a wig. After the Cadillac takes off, the investigators begin pursuing the vehicle. The Cadillac went north on US Highway 41. They drove through a parking lot near Anchor Industries before driving into a grassy median-type area. That is where a U.S. Marshal driving a vehicle intentionally rammed the Cadillac, flipping it onto its side in a ditch. We don't know exactly what was happening in the car in that moment, but thanks to OnStar, or a device similar to OnStar, we get a glimpse of their thoughts before the moment that they wrecked. OnStar has a feature called OnStar Emergency Services. On their website, under Emergency Services FAQs, or Frequently Asked Questions, the quote, "What do I do if I'm in a crash?" question has the answer that states, If you're in a crash, built-in sensors can automatically alert an OnStar advisor and predict the likelihood of a serious injury. An advisor is immediately connected into your vehicle to see if you need help, even if you can't ask for it. You don't have to do a thing. Which is exactly what we know happened moments before Vicky and Casey's crash. I'm gonna play the OnStar/911 call, and it's a little graphic, so just giving you a heads up.
911.
Please stop. They're going to, airbags going to go off and kill us. Airbags are going off. Let's get out and run.
Hello?
Hey, John. Hotel.
Vicky is heard saying we should have never left the hotel, we should go back to the hotel, why did we go to the hotel, something along those lines. She's also heard saying, quote, we should get out and run, and quote, these airbags are gonna kill us. All of this is said before a loud boom sound. Once U.S. Marshals run the Cadillac into the ground, they're able to get Casey to peacefully surrender before realizing Vicky had a gunshot wound to the head. At the time, they were unsure if she was alive or dead, but you can see body cam footage of officers securing the scene by pulling Casey away from the car and handcuffed, all while he is begging officers to, quote, please check on my wife. You can see, with a blurred filter over Vicky's face, officers pull her out of the window of the car and allow paramedics to begin working on her. Vicky had a gun in her hand, leading officers to believe the gunshot wound was self-inflicted. Vicky White was taken to Deaconess Hospital, where she was pronounced dead at 7:06 p.m. Casey was immediately taken into custody and treated for, quote, minor injuries. According to a report from Sergeant Eric Nilsson, as soon as Casey was apprehended, he brought up that he was innocent of the crime he's charged with, killing Connie Ridgway, and he also kept asking about his wife. Casey was held at the Vanderburgh County Jail in Evansville, Indiana, and signed an extradition waiver to Alabama. Casey was driven back to Alabama and was immediately arraigned by a judge they had waiting there. He was asked and yelled questions by the media on the short walk from the car to the door, like, was it worth it? Did you love her? Did you murder Connie Ridgway? And he kept a straight face while about 6 guards led him inside. Photos show a wound on the back of his head, leading speculators to believe that the bullet used by Vicky to shoot herself grazed the back of his head. He was charged for his 11-day escape and taken back to Donaldson Correctional Facility, and his trial was pushed back from June to December. Casey's mom reports that she had talked to Casey about Vicky a lot over the phone in the past, and that they had really loved one another. She also states that Casey has been calling her and crying and grieving over Vicky's death. An autopsy was done on Vicky, confirming that she did in fact die from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I know that came to a really abrupt ending, both the manhunt and the video, but please remember Christy Lynn Shelton's family and Connie Ridgway's family as they navigate through this really weird time as Casey has escaped but been, taken back into prison. I'm sure they feel relief, as well as Casey's ex-girlfriend that he had threatened to kill again. I know that she is feeling a lot of relief now that Casey's back behind bars, but I know this is such a difficult time for them to kind of have to relive these events that Casey caused so much misery in their life, and they're having to relive these events. So just keep these families in your thoughts, and I will keep you updated as the trial for Connie Ridgway happens in December, as well as if anything, hopefully it does, comes from the Christy Lynn Shelton video. Just, keep an eye out for these, support these in any way that you can. I'm gonna post Christy's daughter's TikTok below if you'll go give that a follow, if you'll go support her and her efforts to bring justice for her mom. I know that they have to be feeling a lot of feelings and emotions right now. Thank you so much for watching. I know that my posting schedule has been non-existent essentially. My Instagram is Lexie Stamps. I post there more often. Please feel free to message me there or comment below. Email me at lexiereevesfilms@gmail.com for any cases. If you have a family member, friend, anyone in your area that you'd like me to cover their case, please let me know. I'm thinking about starting a Patreon. I'm not sure if it would go over well or if I would have anybody that would be interested, but if I do, it would be just a couple of dollars a month, and it would be all of the money that would come in from that would be going towards building this channel. So getting a better camera, getting a better setup with lighting and sound. If anybody's interested in that, let me know. And, you know, probably not, I don't know, we'll see what happens. It would be a behind the scenes style video of like researching the cases and how I do that, as well as I would post you know, more often shorter videos behind the scenes of just like my thoughts on cases and things like that. I will also post like my script, because this script that I did today was a 17-page script, so you would be able to get access to all of that. I don't know if you can see it, probably not, but this was a 17-page script, so I would post behind the scenes stuff on that, and I don't know, post that if people like to read it. I'm not sure. I want to do something. I want to work on this. This is where my passion is. I just have a full-time job and I'm busy in life, but you know, at the end of the day, I have to remind myself where my passion is, and that is here making these videos, bringing awareness to these victims and their families, and so I want to get more into that. So just bear with me. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not going to say, oh yeah, I'm going to post 2 times a week, or I'm going to post every week or bi-weekly. I'm going to post when I can, and I hope that's enough for you. I've had a lot of love and comments and messages of people asking me if I was okay and where I'd been, and life has just been crazy, but I miss all of you. I'm happy to be back. Please leave me comments. Let me know what you think about this case. Let me know what you think about the upcoming trial. Do you think Casey's guilty of murdering Connie Ridgway, or do you think he just said he was so he could be transferred back to Lauderdale to be with Vicky? I've seen theories where maybe Vicky was the one that gave him the guilty knowledge information on the case, since it was in Lauderdale County. So let me know what you think. How much of this do you think was Vicky's plan? How much do you think was Casey's plan? Let me know everything that you think. I'm so interested in hearing your thoughts and opinions on this case. As always, I hope you have a beautiful week. Be the reason someone smiles today and every day, and I will see you when I see you. Bye guys, have a good one.
Well, here you go, Tim. Here's the exact spot in Evansville, Indiana, where they caught the fugitives. This is where she off at. There's Highway 41.